Did you know the difference between a 1% conversion rate and 2% conversion rate is not a difference of 1%? It's actually 100% difference, meaning you would be doubling your sales if you can move your conversion rate from 1% to 2%. That's what we're going to be talking about today. What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Erickson Facchin, and this is the world's first and longest running show all about Amazon advertising to make your Amazon PPC life a little bit easier and a little bit more profitable. Today, we've got on the show Andy Craig, who is a fellow core community member. He's also got a great YouTube channel called Ad Habit, and we're going to be talking about conversion rate today. We've been podcasting for a very long time here, so if you want a categorized list of all the different topics we've talked about, grouped by things like SEO and click-through rate and keyword match types, we've got everything laid out for you in a really nice, easy to follow through spreadsheet so you can find exactly what you're looking for and related topics. It's a great way to work through the show. You can get that in the description. You can get links to Andy in the description as well. Thank you so much for listening. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor that you're here. Let's jump in.
I've launched campaigns and picked keywords. I've got my bids, set placements too, and bad mistakes. I've made a few. I've had my share of wrong keywords, but I've gone through. We are the PPC Den, my friends.
You know, conversion rate is it not the determining factor that determines your ACOS? Could I even say, Andy, that it's easy to drive traffic, it's hard to do it profitably?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, right? Conversion rate controls everything on your Amazon account.
Mm-hmm. So let's break this down for people, because inside Amazon, there's a couple different things that mean conversion rate. We got unit session percentage. Let's define that for people just in case they don't know.
Unit session percentage, that is the units that you sell divided by the sessions that are coming in. Basically your conversion rate, but instead of just orders, it's units, right?
Yeah. And then I feel like, and it's confusing because that it's literally not called conversion rate on Amazon. It's called unit session percentage. However, when we generally think about driving advertising traffic, we use conversion rate because unit session percentage is not a thing inside the advertising console. And of course, conversion rate is just your conversions by the amount of clicks that you got. So one conversion, 100 clicks, that will give you 1% conversion rate. And it's interesting because a lot of times when people maybe think they have an ACOS issue, they could potentially have a conversion rate issue. So you mentioned that you work with a lot of small brands, and you generally find that conversion rate. What do you find about conversion rate? Is it not on their mind? Is it not top of mind? Why is conversion rate worth considering when you are a brand, maybe just starting out or trying to grow? Talk to us about conversion rate.
Yeah, I think with a lot of brands that I even just do consulting calls with, I see them come in and they're saying, hey, I think my bids are too high. I have a high ACOS, but they kind of sleep on conversion rate. They don't realize it's something they can change. So we dive in, we look at the listing, right? One of the biggest things is if you're jumping into a category that is competitive or it's not competitive, right? You have to compete against all these other sellers. And if you're converting less than them, you're going to have to pay more. You're going to be less profitable than them unless you could bump up that conversion rate. So there's a lot of different factors that are going to drive that, right? Between your reviews, right? If you're competing against a seller that has 5,000 reviews, they're at 4 stars or 4.5 stars, and you got 10 reviews, you have to do whatever you possibly can to get the best reviews to compete against them, right? And outside of just the reviews and your price point, you got to have an amazing listing to back it up when you're the new seller that's coming into the space.
Mm-hmm. And it's so impactful. And I've always used this analogy. So I've talked to a lot of brands over the years that maybe were direct to consumer only on their Shopify store. And when you look at their organizational chart or their list of responsibilities that they have for their Shopify or BigCommerce or whatever store, they have a website designer, they have a PPC person, they have an SEO person, they have like a webmaster to do the administrative stuff, they have customer support. Like they have this big roster of responsibilities. Typically, one of the responsibilities that they have is conversion rate optimization, meaning somebody who's looking at their website traffic and looking at the rate at which people opt into the coupon pop-up, the thing that says first-time customers get 20% off, enter your email, or the thing that, abandoned cart conversion, how many people add something to cart and then leave, let's try to improve that percentage of people that don't leave, or, Father's Day gift guide, increase the conversion rate of that, or of course the conversion rate of visitor to purchase. And the Shopify organizational stack, like the people that you would hire, the people that you would pay attention to, there'd be somebody in charge of conversion rate optimization, which is how much traffic do we have? What is the rate at which they convert? And there's lots of different kinds of conversions on a Shopify store. There's lead gen and so on and so forth, and the actual purchase. And I feel like it's not as popular on Amazon to think of that as a responsibility of like, what is our conversion rate the last 6 months? And how can we make it go up a bit in the next few months? And there's a million things to do on Amazon. I still think it's relatively new that people don't really know what the organizational chart looks like or the organizational list of responsibilities, but like optimizing for conversion rate, meaning how do you take the exact same amount of traffic that you have now, the exact same relevant traffic that you have, and how do you get potentially 20% more sales from it? Because that's literally what we're talking about. If you get one sale per 100 clicks versus for 1% conversion rate versus 1.2 sales for 100 clicks, that's not just a little bit more sales. Like the difference between 1.2% and 1% is a 20% higher conversion rate. And if you can convert 2% over 1%, that's 2 sales for every 100 clicks. That's literally twice the amount of sales for the exact same cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's really impactful. So how do people, I guess the first thing is, how can you spot, like when should someone optimize for a conversion rate? Like, is this something that they do every single day? Is it something they do once a week there's an activity, or once a month there's an activity, or is it more of a semi-annual thing? Let's just talk about when to consider this in somebody's operational list of responsibilities. Like when should they consider this, or when do they look at it? And then of course, what should they be doing?
Yeah, I would say, step one, right, is just optimizing the listing completely, right? If your listing isn't optimized, if you just have, a bunch of product images and you don't have really nice infographics with a solid brand, colors, font that's consistent throughout the, main images, secondary, the A+ content, the brand story, right? If you don't have that, do that first, right? And then once you get into that, then I always recommend all my clients to constantly run some sort of test, right? You don't have to do everything, every single day, right? Because you want to see what changes are made. You want to give it some time to measure the data. But what we do is when they do run a test, we track the data. We say, okay, on this day, this is what we changed. This is what happened. People could use Amazon's built-in tools, which we do use as well to manage experiments, right? To test the images and the title and all that stuff. But, and people might see it, right? You go in, you do a main image optimization, maybe your conversion rate goes from 15% to 15.5%, right? Okay, it went up a little bit. They're like, it might not be worth my time. But let's say you do that 20 times, and over a course of 6 months, you went from 15.5 to 20%. Right, that's a big difference in your business and your profitability.
That's 33% bigger conversion rate.
Yeah, and I can't do the math that quick like Michael here, but that was good.
Well, I got the calculator open. I can't
good.
either. Yeah. I just did 5 over 15. Okay, got it.
Perfect. Yeah, nice. Yeah, and honestly, like you said too, with the one sale for 100 sessions or clicks, people don't realize that too. Like, okay, how many clicks does it take me to get a sale? They just see a 1% conversion rate, and when you really break that down, you do 1 divided by that conversion rate. People don't realize, that takes me 100 clicks to get every sale, right? That's the problem. It's not the PPC, it's the conversion rate issue. So for anyone that's watching, look at your unit session percentage or your conversion rate. Do 1 divided by that to see how many clicks it takes you to get a sale. And I'm sure you do this as well, Michael, but we work that into how we manage the ads, right? Because if we have a 10% conversion rate, it's going to take 10 clicks. If we have a 20%, it's going to take 5 clicks. So when we're optimizing the ads, we keep that in mind to know when to optimize things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's almost like, I would say there's varying degrees of conversion rate attention, in the sense of you have your individual conversion rate, which you should always try to improve. And then, of course, you have the competitive conversion rate. So it's almost like you want to make your listing as good as you can. And then you want to begin to observe, like, how can I improve my conversion rate relative to my competition? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes people ask the question, like, what's a good conversion rate, or is my listing good? And it's like, you sort of mentioned it really well, which is you want your listing as good as it possibly can be. I call it like the checklist method of optimizing, where it's just like you have your checklist. Like, do you have all the images? Do you have a video? Do you have good A+ content? Is it well designed? Do you have good bullet points? Like, are your best keywords in the best spots on your title? Like, almost like checklist-based optimization. But then you want to run experiments. So yeah, Amazon has that manage your experiment tool. And you can begin to test that. Just like you mentioned, you're looking for incremental gains. And I love that you mentioned, like, going from 15 to 15.5 might not seem like a lot, but like you stack that over time, which I think is the most valuable thing. So it's sort of an ongoing process. And with manage your experiments, it's actually a slow process, meaning you set it up and it runs, and it takes time to get data to have it be statistically significant. So it's a good, I mentioned that because people don't need to be overwhelmed when it comes to A/B testing. Have you ever used PickFu? I've never.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've used PickFu. I started off as a seller.
Yeah.
So like that was one of the things I would use even before I launched a product, to figure out like what people would like, and then I would test the main images, do all that sort of stuff before I even created the listing to begin with. But once Managed Experiments came out, and my listing was live, I would use that quite a bit more.
Right. Because I have to imagine, because you're getting the real data on Amazon with Manager Experiments, and I feel like you can almost pace yourself a little bit more. So you sort of set it up on Manager Experiments, and it takes time to get data, and you can sort of use that data to then go optimize other parts of your business. And then you get into a cadence where you're just sort of constantly managing. One other thing that I found work really well with conversion rate, in fact, there's a statistic, or maybe it's a quote that said, the most efficient way to influence conversion rate, meaning the least amount of effort for potentially the biggest gain, is actually price testing. Mm-hmm. Because price testing, you're literally just changing one number. You don't have to do anything with the designer. You don't have to rack your brain. How do I make this infographic better? And you just go in and you say, what would happen if I changed the price to $1 more, $1 less type thing, and then see how that impacts conversion rate. And we've played around with different ways to do it over the years, sometimes as simple as keeping a running spreadsheet of like conversion rate by day. You mark the day that you changed the price, which isn't perfect, because in a perfect world, you're doing every other visitor. So like time is controlled for. When you sort of do it that way, it's an imperfect way to do it because, people's conversion rate fluctuates from week to week. Traffic is not exactly the same every week. So that's why if you have a big enough data set, you can potentially control for that, and you have very little seasonality, you can potentially control for that. But I found pricing is like a really nice way to play with testing. People might find that maybe their conversion rate goes up quite significantly to offset a price decrease. Which is really interesting.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a lot of clients. Like I'll mention like, hey, let's test the price, from $12 to $10 and see what happens with the conversion rate. And sometimes, even selling at a lower price, they end up making more money at the end of the day. And, we've seen a lot of, different Chinese businesses come on Amazon, and that's the strategy they use for the most part, right? Selling at the lowest price, having the highest conversion rate, and just selling the most amount of units as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you don't want to, and to avoid sort of a race to the bottom, right, where you lower your price, somebody else lowers their price, and you, now have an unsustainable amount. You also want to be sure that you're also looking at product images and product titles, product description, bullet points, play with your A+ content to also push it forward. So you can increase the perceived value as well as do price optimization.
Yeah, and I actually prefer the clients that are at a higher price a lot of the times, right? To be the premium in the market. And I've even, had a client raise its price and its conversion rate went up. So it's not just about lowering for those watching this podcast today.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. So you can, just to reiterate, you can potentially increase profits by increasing price. Meaning, I've generally found that increasing, it's like a price goes up, conversion rate potentially goes down. So I guess like the big brother here of conversion rate is sort of, revenue per impression or revenue per click too, because that might go up, even if your conversion rate goes down 10%, but you increase your price, 20%, you'll still come out ahead.
Yeah.
That's the other thing to think about as well.
Yeah, this is actually really top of mind with me because I just made a YouTube video last night about, people looking and people that have a high ACOS, right? How do you get it down? And what I broke it down was into those individual sections of the conversion rate, the cost per click, the average order value. All that stuff plays into it. And that's how you work your ACOS, by looking at those individual metrics that make it up. And conversion rate is one of the biggest.
And if I were to you take conversion rate and then like you zoom in a little bit further, there's a couple of things that influence conversion rate, which is of course the on-page elements. And then you can break that down even further. On-page elements like title, images, video, so on and so forth. And then also if you go back up to the conversion rate pie, there's also keyword relevance, which is your traffic relevant for what you're trying to accomplish? And generally, like the more specific, so I do want to shine light too that there are things that you can do inside your PPC campaigns, which is just a piece of the overall conversion rate, that can influence conversion rate, like the relevance of the traffic. There is, an auto campaign generally has a lower conversion rate than maybe a specific keyword campaign, like it's targeted. And then within keyword campaigns, there's generic keywords, there's competitor keywords, there's your brand. All of those types of things influence the relevance of your traffic. And I would also say the positioning of your ads can influence traffic. For different brands, for different keywords, sometimes a higher ad position, so like you're in position 1 for your ad versus you're in the midway down on the page versus you're on the second page, that influences your conversion rate as well. So all of these factors are some factors that you can control in your PPC account, and there's some factors that you can control in the product listing as well. So it's sort of like two things that you want to address. And hopefully through good PPC optimization, you're hitting all the PPC-based conversion rates considerations.
Yeah, I end up doing a lot of audits on accounts, and I'll see that a lot. I'll go in and I'll say, okay, spend high to low, see where they're spending their money on the targeting tab. I'll say, okay, they're spending the majority of their money on a super broad search term, right? They're getting tons of clicks on things that may be irrelevant. And then I'll go on to their most relevant search term, and I'll see 1 or 2 clicks over a 30-day period. Okay, that's what we got to focus on, right? Pull the bids down here, push the bids higher here. We're converting much better. We just don't have the traffic, right? And that's what we need. And that PPC conversion rate, I would say it's a little bit easier to control than the overall account conversion rate, right? Because you could control where the traffic is going rather than just relying on where your ranking's at.
Right. So yeah, if there's one thing that people should do, there's a seller out there listening. What is one thing they should do today to take a step towards improving their conversion rate?
Okay, let's go organic first. Organically, what I would do is I would take your listing, take your top, 10 competitors, look at them side by side, right? How does your listing compare with theirs between reviews, price, images, right? What can you change to make yours better? And even look at categories that might even be more competitive than yours. Look at those top listings, and if they're not a big brand name, figure out why they're converting so well and try to implement some of those strategies. Work on your branding, get all that stuff you want like a landing page like your website would be, but on Amazon, right? Make it very branded and high converting. Talk about the benefits and the features. And then get into the PPC side, just like we said, right? Make sure your spend is going where you want it to go, right? The majority of your spend should be going towards where you're converting the best. Obviously, you're going to convert not quite as well on those super high search volume keywords that are super competitive, a little bit more broad, but you want to make sure you're maximizing the spend on those best search terms, especially if you're not ranking, right? Look at that top of search impression share, look at how much is going towards product pages versus top of search, rest of search, and try to optimize for those areas where you're converting really well.
Yeah, I love it. I love the competitive analysis. That's also a component of conversion rate optimization, seeing how you compare to competitors, and then letting that tune in. There's also tools that you can use inside Amazon, like brand analytics, to sort of clue you in terms of how your conversion rate compares to others, what kind of, what's the assumed conversion rate for other things, like Product Opportunity Explorer can help clue you in on that. So there's lots of tools to clue you in terms of how your conversion rate compares to others, which we've talked a lot about on this show. And after you find those differences and commonalities between the brands, doing that competitive analysis, I always like practical questions, which is like, what should someone do? I know how I've approached. So like once you identify those things, you then have options, which is like, okay, I want to change my title, or I want to change some product images. What do you recommend? How do you normally approach like changing bullet points or changing product description or changing titles or images? Do you just switch it and you're like, I assume the other one's going to be better? Or do you manage your experiments?
We don't do a lot of it manually ourselves. We have a lot of our clients do it themselves, but we always recommend managed experiments just to actually measure it. We've definitely seen less impact with bullet points than we would with title, and we see more impact with main image usually than we do with title as well. But one thing that's very hard to control is the reviews also. But you could even track that too. Like as soon as you go from 4.5 stars to 4, right? We could be like, oh, right there, that's when our conversion rate dropped. That was the issue. But we tend to recommend managed experiments to track the data the best.
Got it. And then, of course, constantly be addressing the PPC factors. Awesome. I think we've given people something to. I like to give people homework. As a former teacher myself, I think we've given people homework. Run the competitive analysis. Think of ways to use manager experiments and improve that conversion rate. And you're right. We didn't spend too much time on star ratings, which of course badges, which of course massively influence conversion rate as well. Any parting thoughts on badges and star ratings?
Yeah, I would say star ratings is definitely something we really focus on and have, it's gray hat, it's black hat, but like have clients have some sort of strategy using their own list, trying to, incentivize reviews by doing it legally, right? Doing it the right way.
Right.
And focusing on that as a strategy too, right? Making a task every week to reach out to customers to try to get reviews and do all that stuff. We don't have a ton of strategies as far as badges go, and I would love to get your take on that, right? How do you try to get those badges to increase that conversion rate and the click-through rate?
It's funny because it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning you work on your conversion rate, you get a higher conversion rate, like you do the competitive analysis, you optimize the page, you optimize your traffic, and in turn, you can end up with a bestseller badge. And that just fuels even more growth. So Amazon is really a positive feedback loop. So I always, think of that, like the brands that end up with bestseller badge, like they either did one of two things. They either just, walked right into it, almost accidentally, or they like really tried to work on their conversion rate over time to build like the best thing in that particular category. So I see it more often than not. It's like a really concentrated effort where they're trying to like boost. I do think outside traffic, which you mentioned, is also helpful, because if you bring in outside traffic from a list, from Google ads, from social ads, Pinterest ads, if you bring in outside traffic, you now have access to more traffic than maybe a competitor who was not doing it. So I'm a big fan of outside traffic to get an edge, because you're basically, let's take one of your keywords that's also being searched on Google, that's also being searched on Bing. Let's take your demographic audiences, they're also on social. So like hopefully you have your own brand outside of Amazon. Sending traffic to your Amazon listing periodically is a great way to tap into outside traffic that your competitor does not have access to. And hopefully your list is a really engaged group to like help you get reviews more at a higher rate than your, on Amazon traffic. So I think that's one of the biggest hacks for Amazon, which is use off Amazon traffic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And some of my best clients are the ones that drive the outside traffic, that have a social presence, have, Facebook ads running, have Google ads. Even though they're running a lot of these things, people still prefer to buy on Amazon a lot of the times. So we'll notice a huge dip. Like, even though they're sending the traffic to their website, to the Shopify store, there's still an overflow of people that just go on Amazon and search for it, right? So that has a big difference. One of the things I wanted to jump back on that I just thought about around that, Shopify store conversion rate optimization, right? A lot of times what I'll see is Amazon converts better than your website a lot of times, right? But, you might make more profit on your website. And Amazon, if they're already converting better, people think, oh, they're already have a higher conversion rate than my website, so why do I need to focus on it? You're usually going to pay more cost per click and things through Amazon than you might through, let's say, Google ads or some of these other things going to your website. And that's where you have to offset it with that higher conversion rate. So, if you're kind of settling just because it's doing better than your website, don't do some of these strategies that we talked about.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like if you're an e-commerce brand, Amazon is one channel. And your site is another channel. So like getting access to more channels is generally better. And then they can fuel one another, right? Like they can fuel, particularly I see it more like sending ranking juice to Amazon using your list. The most wild example, that's one of my favorite e-commerce brands, has been a client for years and years and years, actually since 2017, is Woody's sunglasses. Shout out Corey and Woody's. On his site, if you go to his Shopify store and you go and you buy it, on his checkout page, on the actual product page, it will ask you if you just want to go buy this on Amazon. It's the boldest move that I've ever seen an e-commerce brand take. But I think it's just such a wonderful brand that converts super good, has tons of badges, because he's literally sending people. When you're on his site, you can buy with, you can check out from Shopify using the default Shopify checkout. He's also got the buy with Amazon Prime. So like you could stay
I'm
on
looking at it right now.
You could stay on his site, but you're buying it with Prime. That's another thing he installed. Or you can just literally click a button and go and buy it on Amazon, which I think is wild. So like that traffic that's so ready, just think about that. Somebody's ready to buy and they're just like, oh, I'll buy it on Amazon. That's easy. Easy returns. I can return it at the UPS store or whatever. Just imagine how well that traffic converts for him. Wild. So yeah, outside traffic, major hack.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of brands are pretty weary of doing that buy with Prime on their website. But like anything we say in here, right? Test it, right? Run it for a little bit, see what difference it makes in overall profitability, overall sales for your business.
Why have you found that people are a little nervous with buy with Prime on their own Shopify site?
Just because they make more profit usually through Shopify as far as like profit per sale, because they don't have to deal with the Amazon fees, but they don't factor in the conversion rate difference.
Right.
So, put it on the website, see what kind of clicks you get versus the people that land on your page, that rate, and see how the difference is in the profitability.
Yeah. If there's one thing so when you're on your own Shopify site, you can track every single nook and cranny of what people are doing, like how long they spend, what they're doing, what by device, by state, by demographic. Like there's so many ways to analyze your website traffic and then optimize it and tweak it for a conversion rate. So like if you have a widget on your site, you'll be able to see like, oh wow, almost nobody clicks that widget. I should replace it with something else. Or setting up A/B tests on your website, so easy to test on the fly. There's so many little tools to test every single piece of your Shopify site or your BigCommerce site, whatever it is. It'd be so amazing to have like that same, like how far are people scrolling down on my Amazon listing? Like where are people pausing to read? Like where's that high impact area? That'd be amazing.
Hopefully eventually. That'd be great. I mean, a lot of the tools they've come out with the brand analytics and the product opportunity explorer, a lot of this stuff is super helpful, and I hope they continue to give us more data that we can.
Yes. Well, Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show. I hope we've inspired people to optimize our listings a little bit more, to focus on conversion rate a little bit more, and view it as part of the ongoing thing that you do. Run those experiments to boost that conversion rate. You're a core community member.
Yes, sir.
And you've been there since 2013. So thanks so much for that. I always recommend it as a place to go and learn. And we have a great weekly mastermind. Anyway, so thank you for being a core member. And you've also got a great YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Habit. I just scheduled my times to be on your YouTube channel.
Perfect.
Can't wait.
Me neither.
Yeah. We have links to all of your stuff in the description here. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming on the Badger Den.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye.